Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing a GeForce RTX 3060 12GB model in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This one is the AFOX model of the card. I am running it with the latest Nvidia drivers and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Ups GPU-Z, and again, it's the 12GB GDDR6 version. And over on the left, I am pairing it with a Ryzen 9 7950X3D CPU with half of its cores disabled, making it the same as a Ryzen 7 7800X3D. And you should get the same FPS with a much slower CPU. You don't need this beefy of a system, of course. This is just a GPU benchmark, so that's why I'm pairing it with this. And 32GB of DDR5. Let's get into it, shall we? And here we have it, guys. Let's go over the settings first. I am starting at 1080p resolution and we're utilizing the very ultra graphics preset here because, well, we can do it with a 12GB GPU. The only difference between this and Supreme is that Supreme changes the texture pool size to Supreme and Very Ultra has it on Very Ultra. There's no major difference in terms of visuals comparing this to Supreme, and on Supreme I saw it going over 12GB, at least at 4K resolution, so I want to keep it on Very Ultra here, but everything else is basically maxed out. We still don't have path tracing in this game. That will come tomorrow in an update, and we're using DLSS set to DLAA, which means it's native resolution. It's applying the anti-aliasing from DLSS over native, and down here we only have color filters and contrast levels and so on, so it's not really GPU intensive at all. So we're here in the Vatican Gardens at the moment, and it's getting a very smooth frame rate. As you can see, the frame time is way better than it was on the RTX 4060, that's for sure, mainly because that GPU was running out of VRAM even at lower settings at 1080p resolution. Oh boy, okay, no, it's fine. I don't want to fight you, buddy. I just want to get out of here. All right, maybe I will need to fight this guy. Okay, so he just stops right there. Of course he does. Okay, so I should start counting our FPS, and as you can see over in this area, it does drop into the 60s, but it is very similar in terms of an experience as what the 4060 provided, aside from the fact that we are running very high textures and ultra shadows, which still have a horrible pop-in, by the way. I don't want to, guys, I just want to showcase the pop-in. As you can see over there, the shadows just keep on rendering like 10 meters away from you, actually 3 meters away from you. So that's pretty bad, actually. I don't like to see such low levels of shadow pop-in. Yeah, look at that one over there, rendering in as we walk. It's very low quality, but again, the shadows are maxed out at the moment, and this is what we get. That's like my major complaint about the graphics in this game. Everything else looks pretty decent. Obviously, some aspects of it aren't really amazing, like, yeah. I've been seeing some comments not agreeing with me, telling that this game is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the first initial area where you start, basically, which is... these guys are waiting for me, actually. Which is the jungle area. It's pretty impressive because it has very dense foliage, lots of shadows and so on, and it actually looks pretty impressive because of the density of it. But if you start looking at things very closely, you can tell that it's not really that amazing. But hey, it is a pretty game nonetheless, and that's what matters, and it runs very, very well, and that's obviously a very good thing as well. And again, you could change the texture pool size to Supreme, but I just don't think it's needed with a 3060. You'll just be closer to the 12GB threshold without gaining anything, pretty much. The visual difference between Very Ultra and Supreme here is negligible completely. Alright, so I just want to check out the Peru area right here, which is where you start, basically. And this is that forest area that I was telling you about. It looks pretty impressive compared to the city area, you know. It's very nice if you don't start looking at things very up close. Then you start seeing that the textures aren't really that amazing, you know. As you can see right here, there are some better looking textures. For example, in Ghost Recon Breakpoint, that game has some really impressive looking textures, and it runs really well on like GTX 1060s and 1080s and stuff like that. But anyways, overall, if you're not licking things and not paying attention to the shadow pop-in, it's pretty, right? And over in this area, by the way, it is dropping into the lower 60s, high 50s as well. So if you have more vegetation on screen, as you can see, it gets a little bit more intensive. But yeah, it doesn't really bother me too much, the fact that we're getting down into the 50s sometimes. So I just keep using these settings with an RTX 3060. It works extremely well. It looks good, and you can play the game all day long without slowdowns because of VRAM related issues and without a weird frame time graph like we saw with the 4060. Once again, in terms of consistency, it's definitely better than its successor, which is... it's very sad to see, you know, but it is what it is, my friends. They decided to put 8 gigabytes on the 4060. I really hope they don't decide to put 8 gigabytes on the 5060. Let's apply 1440p now, and we're at 2560 by 1440 now, utilizing the same very ultra settings here with very ultra texture pool size as well as ultra shadows. And I need to remind you guys, or maybe you didn't watch the 4060 video, but when I changed it to 1440p with the RTX 4060, I had the texture pool size set to low and the shadow quality set to medium, because that's what you needed to sacrifice at 1080p resolution with an 8GB GPU. Everything else was set to the maximum still, and the 4060 got us 5 FPS. I'm not joking, 5 FPS. It wasn't even in the jungle area, it was in the Vatican City area, which could be a little bit more VRAM intensive, I guess, so I'm gonna go there in just a little bit, but I don't think the 36 is gonna have a problem. We're still running ultra shadows, we're still running very ultra... I almost say very high every single time because I'm not used to very ultra. That's something new, you know. There's ultra presets in this game and the supreme preset, but in between there's the very ultra preset, which is what we're using here. It doesn't really look too very ultra to me either, like those shadows, the pop-in again. But anyways, you can clearly see that this is playing it absolutely fine. It's not a very smooth experience, you know, very fast experience, because the frame rate is not 60 plus anymore. It was dropping into the 50s previously at 1080p, so of course at 1440p it drops into the 40s sometimes, but it is a playable experience. And if you have a 1440p monitor, since this game is a single player title, I think I would go with this. It is stable, it's not stuttering at all, we're not seeing weird frame time variations like we saw with the successor of this GPU, and even with the 4090 I was seeing some weird spikes sometimes, which were completely fixed by locking the frame rate. Maybe they had a little update that fixed that, but I don't think so. I didn't see any updates coming to this game just yet. What I do know for sure is that this is actually a pretty stable and smooth experience, and I would enjoy it all day long like this on the 3060, and it was getting 5 FPS on the 4060. It's insane. But let's go to the Vatican City again, and well, here we get even higher frames per second with the little RTX 3060. Look at this. It's closer to 60 FPS, actually going above 60 FPS at times, so it's definitely pretty much the same thing as we saw at 1080p resolution. We still don't have any VRAM limitations here, even at 1440p with the very ultra settings with the RTX 3060, guys. This is pretty incredible, actually. I'm happy and sad at the same time, honestly. The fact that the 4060 was so terrible at 1440p, I mean, it was getting these FPS, I believe, at low settings in 1440p resolution, maybe a little bit higher, I guess, but yeah, we needed to drop it down entirely to low settings. The shadow pop-in is still very much present, as you can see. It looks terrible, and as you start approaching things, it's just, the LOD is so small on these things. It's terrible, okay? And also, the movement of people, or some NPCs at least, at the distance, they seem like they're running or walking at 15 FPS or something like that. And then if you get closer to them, they become smooth at the frame rate that you're actually running. Anyway, these are just little tricks that they did, I guess, to improve performance. I am grateful for that. Hello, sister. What are you doing here? Black shirt. Okay, I don't know. I don't know if I agree, but I'm gonna throw you with a... Wait, I want to throw this. can't throw it to her. You know what? I wish you had a little bit more freedom in this game to do whatever the heck you want. Obviously, it would wreck your saves, and you know, you would need to reload your save basically. But if I want to cause havoc, why the heck can't I? Oh yeah, let's see Jack. You know, let's just go up here, and here he is. Hello, Jack. How's it going? Beautiful boy. Look at him. It's so cute, actually. And when he yawns... Oh, he meows sometimes. Oh, that's so cute. I haven't heard him meow previously. Anyway, yeah, it's getting very close to 60 FPS on average. Again, if you have an overclocked version of this card, you can actually get to 60 FPS on average, at least in this area, the Vatican City. VRAM is absolutely fine. Maybe on Supreme texture pool size it wouldn't be, but again, it looks the same on very ultra, and it keeps things consistent and super smooth still in terms of the frame time graph. So no problems whatsoever here, guys. 11 gigabytes of allocation, 10 gigabytes of usage. 3060 is thriving. Again, like 4060 with these settings would crash. It wouldn't even load the game. And with low textures and high shadows, or medium shadows actually, it would get us 5 FPS. Okay, I tried loading this game on the high settings preset. Okay, this is the very ultra settings preset, 2 notches above. And the high settings preset on the 4060 crashed every time on launch. I couldn't launch the game. Anyway, at 1440p, we can enable like quality DLSS, which shouldn't look bad at all. And now, instead of getting those sub 60 FPS average, we're getting 80 FPS. This is way better, guys. And if you are at 1440p resolution, this is exactly what I would utilize with this GPU. Quality DLSS looks a little bit worse, okay? Like you can see some bit more aliasing in some areas, some edges and so on. There's a lot of aliasing actually in those. But yeah, that's obviously going to happen. In most games, it happens with quality DLSS at 1440p. The difference is noticeable, visually speaking, but it is worth taking, in my opinion, because of how much higher the FPS are now with quality DLSS at 1440p. I wouldn't do this at 1080p, you know, because at 1080p, you'd be rendering 720p with DLSS and upscaling it to 1080p, and it starts looking pretty rough. But at 1440p, it renders a 960p image upscaled to 1440p, and it actually looks really good. It looks better than native 1080p, for example. So there's that, guys. You can now get 60 plus FPS all of the time on an RTX 3060 with very ultra settings. Overall, it is a smooth and playable experience, even at native resolution. So of course, with DLSS quality, it's even better. You're getting 80s, 90s even sometimes. It's awesome, guys. It is pretty good. Anyway, let's try it out in Peru again, this time with DLSS quality and at 1440p as well. Instead of getting 40s, we're now in the 60s, so it's much closer to what we saw at 1080p resolution. It's actually better than what we saw at 1080p resolution. So you get better graphics like this and better stability than just flat-out native 1080p resolution, and still ultra settings, or very ultra settings actually. It is stable, frame time graph is smooth, everything is just great. If you have a 1440p monitor with this GPU, you can run the game absolutely fine, as you can see. Yeah, it's definitely worth playing if you have the 3060 and you want to play the game. Performance won't be an issue here, okay? And even if you have a 1080p display, I would probably utilize... Look at that. The guy's walking at like 15 FPS once again because he's far away. But yeah, if you have a 1080p display, I think I would utilize DLSS to play at 1440p and then DLSS quality to play at these frame rates, or maybe just DSR to play at 1440p and then apply 1440p resolution on your 1080p display. Coupled with the DLSS quality, once again, it will look sharper than 1080p resolution, and it actually runs better, as you can see. No drops into the 50s anymore. Really solid experience, guys. Let's go up to 4K resolution on the 3060. I didn't even attempt this on the 4060 because of its 8 gigabytes of VRAM. And here we go, 3840 by 2160, still utilizing very ultra settings with the texture pool size set to very ultra. It still doesn't show us the warning message over here saying that we're running out of VRAM or VRAM isn't enough. Yeah, still very ultra preset. It's DLSS quality though, so let's just disable that. I forgot. But you saw there for a second, DLSS quality was actually pretty playable. Let's go back to DLEA, and now the VRAM is creeping up there, as you can see. 11.8 gigabytes of allocation, actually. But not a problem. It's still not slowing down. It is very sharp right now, the picture quality. I really like it, guys. Damn. Now it's looking really nice. Okay. But obviously, with these FPS, it's not playable. Still better than the 5 FPS that the 4060 got at 1440p. But the thing is, with the quality DLSS at 4K resolution, it looks basically the same as 4K native. Maybe slightly softer in some areas, but it's very hard to tell the difference, guys, between quality DLSS and 4K native, at 4K, of course. And yeah, we're getting 40 FPS. It's what? It's pretty similar to what we saw at 1440p resolution, maybe a little bit slower, but this is, in fact, upscaling from a 1440p image to 4K. It looks way better than a 1440p, all right? And it is playing with decent FPS still. And of course, inside of the city area, it would get even higher frames per second. Wow. I'm very impressed, okay? What I'm going to do next is performance DLSS, because at 4K resolution, especially on smaller monitors, performance DLSS still looks really, really good. And in this game, that's definitely the case. You can tell some weirdness going on, like the LOD on that over there. It has a little bit of a dots issue, which is usually caused by DLSS performance, but I think it's not here in this game because it's just the LOD. Yeah, in terms of edges, aliasing, and so on, you can't really tell much about it here in this particular scenery. Maybe those branches, yeah, those branches definitely have quite a bit of ghosting to them, as you can see. That's definitely an issue with performance DLSS, something that you wouldn't see with quality DLSS or native resolution, of course. But it's just a minor thing. It's a minor trade-off to get closer to 60 frames per second. As you can see, it's 50s. If you have a 4K display with 3060, I know a couple of you at least have, you can still play the latest Indiana Jones game, guys. It's gonna run okay. It's not the smoothest thing once again, because it's not 60 plus FPS. It's not a high refresh rate experience either, obviously, but it is playable. It is 50 plus or 45 plus 100% of the time. It's enjoyable. VRAM is enough. It's smooth overall. No stuttering issues on that frame time graph. It's just a good experience. Let's go back to the Vatican City, my friends. 69 FPS at the beginning. That's amazing. And yeah, look at that. I was expecting slightly higher FPS. Obviously, it's exactly the same as we saw previously. I guess if you don't have VRAM-related issues, you're always going to see higher FPS in the Vatican City compared to the jungle area, basically. And we end up getting 60s on average. Some drops into the 50s still, you know, but it is not major. RAM usage did go up, though. It's at 13 gigabytes now, and previously it was at 12. So maybe it swapped some things into the RAM already that should be on VRAM. I'm not sure about that, but at least it's not stuttering because of it. There's that, guys. I think that's been it for this one. Hello. Is this Bob? I think this is Bob. Goodbye, Bob. Oh, wait. I said goodbye, Bob. There we go. Nice position. Thanks very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. This is great on the 3060 once again. I wish the lower end GPUs would have more VRAM, both from Nvidia and AMD, and I'm looking forward to the Intel B580 as well with 12 gigabytes for $250. That should be pretty interesting. I'm definitely going to buy it and take a look at it. So stay tuned in for that if that's something that you're interested in, and I'll catch you in the next one. Love you all. Bye-bye.